I'm gonna see if you can hear my AC, my extremely monster AC that actually doesn't work very well. And if you can, I'm gonna be very sad because I'm not saying that means I bought the lapel mic for nothing. It's not what I bought the lapel mic for. I do absolutely hate where I live. I hate it so much. The AC sucks, and it's so loud that I can't record anything at all. Where's the camera? Where does one look for the camera? I actually don't know where to stick this. I'll just stop. Ooh, it seems I'm getting a transmission from the future.
Hello? Hi, it's me, Ruthie from the future, here to tell you about this video's featured comment. Last video was part 2 of the Yvette Spotridle formal investigation, and because I recorded the footage so long ago, I'm probably just gonna put it to the side, edit it later, release it as bonus content, unless in case I run out of footage for later. This comment comes from Zach Keith, and they say, I'm not very used to non-chaotic cryptid mother. Side note, I'm a welding engineer major, and we have to take 2 metallurgy courses. The bolts slightly didn't melt, they simply failed because the heat combined with the weight they were holding caused them to stretch and then snap. Gasoline can also burn at 1500 degrees Fahrenheit. In my first metallurgy course, our professor told us that the jet fuels didn't melt the steel beams during 9/11, but the shear weight combined with the heat and stresses on the steel beams caused a fatigue/ductile failure. The grain structure of steel begins to change at around 1300 degrees Fahrenheit, so the fire was well within the grain structure transition range. Bent steel beams are typically straightened below 1200 degrees Fahrenheit, which means it is entirely plausible that the beams could have bent and failed. That's actually really cool to learn. I don't actually know anything about metallurgy or any of that fun stuff. Metallurgy sounds like a fantasy job. Hey, thanks for commenting on the last video, and if you want to have a featured comment from this video or the next video, just comment down there. Okay. Goodbye.
Hello, it's me, your cryptid mother here, back at it again with another video, talking about whatever the heck I want to talk about. And this week, we're going to be talking about Last of Us 2. If you don't know, I like to stream on Twitch. We recently played Last of Us 2, like everybody else in the gaming world. In case you don't like to play video games, I'm going to give you a short TLDR of the Last of Us 2 space. Last of Us 2 came out a couple of weeks ago, but did it really actually come out a couple of weeks ago? That's a lie. It actually got leaked a while ago. I don't actually remember when it got leaked. And people were very upset of the story that was supposed to be told. And then since then, people have been upset about one thing or another. There's a lot of wonderful videos on the internet of which you could get a complete dissection of the story, because I'm not going to be doing that. No, I'm not going to give you my extreme two-piece and thoughtful analysis of why this game is either garbage or a masterpiece. In fact, my opinion of the game is that it's just okay. I saw what Naughty Dog was trying to do, and I don't quite remember, but I think Chat and I rated the game an 8.5 out of 10. A 7 out of 10, one of the two. Either way, it's an above average game, good voice acting, good characters, and some good moments. I think trying to make you hate a character and then try to flip your hatred for a character on its head to show two sides of a coin is actually a really good idea. They just didn't do it very well. There are a couple of reasons why people don't like this game. For one, it got spoiled. I am a firm believer that if this game did not get spoiled at all, then no one would be quite upset about it. In fact, I bet they would be praising the game for doing something as bold as killing the main character, a beloved character, or something like that. When you're playing a video game, the story is only half of the equation and the gameplay is the other half. And if you don't have the gameplay, then the story is kind of eh. Now, I could also go into detail about all of the other discourse that this has brought on, whether it be the LGBTQ plus representation, the fact that Abby could literally destroy your fragile masculinity, or the fact that, oh my God, Joel died. I could go into that. But instead, I'm going to do what I do best, and that's essentially make a word-spoken fan fiction of how it should have been in my head, because obviously I'm the best. To be honest, this game had a lot of great pieces, and I just think not good execution. Pacing is a big issue. I feel like if pacing was... I feel like if we had given more pacing, it wouldn't have been a shit. I'm going to fix this game to where it's actually going to be the best game, and I'm going to tell you my number one biggest problem with this game. Are you ready? This is my scalding hot take. Are you ready? You ready for it? I don't like that I'm playing the last game of a trilogy, and I never played the second game. That's right, my scalding hot take is that Last of Us should have been a trilogy, and I think it would have been a really good trilogy had they taken a risk. Essentially, the only way that I can feasibly see to fix Last of Us 2 without having some of the weird issues of pacing is making a second game just about Abby. If I remember right, and correct me if I'm wrong, I do remember that after The Last of Us had come out, the guy who made Last of Us was like, we're not going to make Last of Us 2 about Joel and Ellie. It's going to be more of an anthology if we continue to make games in this universe. And to be honest, I was really excited about having an anthology video game series. This is going to be me describing the second game that I think that should have came out, and then how that fixes the third game. Last of Us 1 was great. It has its flaws, but it is always going to be revered as one of the great video games of the greats. The thing about the first game is that the first game is a father-daughter relationship adventure thing we've seen a million times before, but it was well executed. Almost kind of cliche if you think about it, but there's nothing wrong with being cliche. There's a reason why this type of storytelling works. Last of Us was a broken man taking a little girl under his wing, becoming a not quite as hard old man, and then making a decision that affects... Hold on, I need to go on a tangent. People bring up the argument that Joel is not a good person, and you know what? You're right. Joel isn't exactly a great person. But people also are saying that Joel doomed all of humanity to die from the zombie plague. Doomed implies that humans aren't actually thriving in this environment. By the time Last of Us has happened, the zombie plague has already been around for a long time, and the humans are thriving. Granted, it sucks, but they aren't dying. We're not an extinct species yet. So that's point number one. Joel didn't doom all of humanity. Humanity was never doomed to start out with. Number two, there's no way to actually mass produce this cure that these people would have had. And if there was a way to mass produce it, you'd know that the Fireflies would have the upper hand, and then the second game would be taking down the Fireflies because now they are greedy assholes. Humans are fucked up, and that means that if there was a cure to be had, it would probably be lost because people fucking suck. But remember that we also have lived in a zombie ravaged land for a long time by The Last of Us 1. So Ellie was born in the zombie thing and was 14 by the time that the first game started, which means most of the things that you could probably use to mass produce aren't even working at the moment anyway. And point three, this isn't exactly dooming humanity. This is more of just how I justify Joel making the decision to take Ellie and why I think it is more deserved than people give it credit for. If nothing else, I think that everybody should have agency, or at least a voice, or be able to get consent. If I remember right, the Fireflies never sat Ellie down and was like, hey kid, in order to make this cure, you're gonna have to die. So, is that okay? You could make the argument that because she's a kid, or that because it's all of humanity on the line, that it's totally fine to take over someone's agency, but that kind of just makes you a fucking monster. Exactly when does the end start justifying the means? If Ellie had given consent to die, which I am 100% on the side that she would, but they didn't give her that choice. If she had said she had died and then Joel made that other decision, it would have been ooh, it would have been bad. That's when I would say, hey, Joel is actually the bad guy here. He is making bad decisions because he went against Ellie's wishes. But in the first game, Ellie didn't have wishes at all. Honestly, Abby's dad seems like kind of a dick. He was gonna kill a little girl and not even study anything like antibodies or maybe how her brain functions on a CT scan over long periods of time. There was like actually no science done at all. Anyway, I'm done justifying Joel on what he did and how it's not actually dooming humanity. Anyway, moving on. There's a scene in Last of Us Part 2 where Abby is going down the hallway with a gun and is going to the operating room and then sees her dad, and her dad is dead. That should have been the first scene of this second game. Why? Because first of all, if you've played the first game, which a lot of people have, right before the second game came out, I know I was one of them, we would have recognized the hospital and then we would have seen the doctor dead, which we had previously seen get shot by Joel. And then we start the game with just Abby. Just Abby, one person, Abby. In order for me to actually care about Abby's struggle and Abby's quest for revenge, I actually have to get to know Abby and kind of, I have more than 15 hours of boring combat to go through. I honestly think Abby's story would be extremely interesting to explore. First, she's bent on revenge. Hell-bent on revenge. Also has a failing romantic story. And I would love to know more about the Seraphites and them getting to the WLF and just all of that. I think that would be such a compelling story. Essentially, we're going to be spending this entire game, this entire second game, being convinced that Joel needs to die. He's actually the bad guy. He's a fucking smuggler. He just doomed humanity. Oh no. It would also be really fun to just essentially have an entire game for her to be training, taking leads and being disappointed, and learning more about the Seraphites, seeing the WLF and Seraphites stand still, watching it essentially burst, the whole treaty burst, and then actually finding where Joel is hiding. This entire game, to be honest, is to just humanize Abby and her entire team, her entire friends, all of the Fireflies, all of them, how they moved to WLF, all of that, it doesn't matter. We're trying to make them not hateable. Imagine with me for a second that we live in a world where the second game existed and you learned about Abby, you learned about her struggles, learned about all of her teammates, and made it to the Jackson. Then we play as Ellie. Actually, we play as Joel, and we have no idea if Abby is there yet. It's Wyoming, it snows, it's in the north. I don't know how long it snows. Is it constantly snowing on Wyoming? I wouldn't know. However, whenever Abby gets there, it's snowing, and when Joel is around, it's snowing too. I want to feel the tension of knowing that someone is out there to kill Joel, but Joel doesn't know and goes about his everyday life. Now, I see what they were trying to do about keeping it from us whether or not Ellie actually learned about, Joel telling the truth. But wouldn't it be great if we had the 2 to 4 days before Abby got there to really sink in on how much it hurts Ellie that Abby took away her ability to be able to forgive Joel. That's why Ellie is so upset. She needs to learn how to forgive herself for not forgiving Joel, and then that way she can forgive Ellie. It's like a long chain of forgiveness. That's trauma for you. Joel being sad, us learning that Joel and Ellie are not on the up and up because Joel did a fucky wucky, whoopsie doopsie. Ellie being like, hey, you know what? I want to forgive you. I want you back in my life. Them doing that. And then, you know what? We think maybe Abby left. Maybe Abby isn't there yet. And then, bam! First of all, giving us a few more days to play as Joel will make it a lot more satisfying for when Joel dies. I want like 6 hours of just Joel. I think having Joel around for much longer so we can see how he has evolved off screen is really, really important for us to be able to really understand why he did what he did. A lot of people are like, oh, Joel would have never trusted Abby. Why? Why did he do this? He has been living at Jackson for a while now, and Things are done differently at Jackson. They act like civilized humans at Jackson. And it would be really great for us to see that, for us to even rescue someone, and maybe someone harps on Joel to be like, hey, remember, that's not how we do things around here. We have to treat people nicely. I would love more time in Jackson doing day-to-day life things, because at the end of the day, we really just wanted an update on what Joel and Ellie were doing and how their lives were going. So then you get to the climax of the first act of the third game, which would be Abby cornering Joel, and we know exactly what's going to happen, and then bam, Joel dies, beaten by a golf club. We aren't changing that. I do think the way that his death happened, while wasn't justified in the game that came out, would be more justified in a game where we understood Abby and how she's literally just been hell-bent on this rage inside of her for so many years. The third game would then be able to run a lot smoother. We could do day 1 by Abby, day 2 by Ellie. And it wouldn't really matter that their stories didn't exactly coincide, because we already know what's going on in Abby's life. That was some of the criticism that I saw, was that Abby's and Ellie's story didn't coincide at all. And I thought that was fine, but I think that more people would have accepted it if we already knew Abby, instead of them trying to convince us that, you know, Abby is actually someone we like. The problem with the storytelling in Last of Us Part 2 is that it really relies on the player's capacity to empathize, and there are just a lot of people who don't want to empathize in video games. A lot of people just want a power fantasy, okay? We want to be the good guy. We don't want to understand why the bad guy is bad. We just know bad guy, bad, hit bad guy. A lot of people aren't willing to let go of that mentality and think and feel deeper for a game, especially when the game is badly paced. I really do think that if the pacing was better done, we would have been able to empathize Abby much better, and it would have been a smoother and simpler experience. But spoiler alert, that's not what they did. Just to run down exactly what I'm doing to fix the game. I know this video is messy and it's not as in-depth as some of my other fix-its, but I also don't think that there is too much in-depth to fix the game. The game is inherently flawed because we don't know Abby. That's the main problem. Who is Abby? And the game tries to spend a lot of time making us care for Abby, but all of that should have been groundwork for the third game. It all should have been groundwork. It all should have been laid already. I want to compare it to maybe just skipping the second movie in Lord of the Rings trilogy. Yeah, sure, it makes sense, and we still like these people, but how the fuck did they get here, and why do I care? To recap on what I'm saying, and probably to say it more eloquently now that I've been ranting about it for 30 minutes, let's just wrap everything nicely in a neat little bow. Game 2 starts with Abby going down the hallway and then seeing her dad dead. Oh no, that sucks. Shit, now I have a motive to try and track this guy down. The things accomplished in the second game would be Abby and friends going to the WLF, being accepted by the WLF, and getting into a war that they really don't care about. And then going after leads for Joel, finding them most to be dead, watching her get crazed about revenge and it becoming the sole reason why she does what she does, expand on all of her friends, expand on the failed romance, and finally, maybe, if it's well done, convince us that maybe Joel isn't a great person. By the end of the second game, we are now at Jackson looking over and we are plotting to kill our friend Joel. The third game starts up and we are actually playing as Joel for the first maybe 5 to 6 hours, and we are going through a few days at the Jackson establishment. We get the groundwork that Ellie and Joel's relationship isn't exactly doing very well, maybe even getting a flashback to whenever she ran away, and then the circus tent thingamajiggy happens. Ellie reaches out the olive branch, and then the next day, Joel dies in terrible, terrible ways. Terrible ways implies that he died more than once, but yeah, just one way. He died terribly, very terribly. would also like to explore the fact that Abby now not having a thing for revenge, I would like to see her get what I would call revenge depression. I think that revenge is probably always at least a little bit satisfying, but when you spend your entire life and your entire mental energy going after one thing, whether it be revenge or whatever, whenever you accomplish that, the next day, it's just like, what do you do now? And then you're filled with a sense of hopelessness and being lost and shit. And it would be really cool to see her go through that. I would also like a funeral scene with Joel. The player never got a chance to actually mourn Joel's death. We were whisked away to rope physics way quicker than we really should have been. And that obviously falls into pacing. In my game, there would be a funeral. We would be reminded why Joel is actually a good person in his own right. People speak up about him, make great notes. Everyone talks about how of a great guy, and all it does is fuel Ellie's soul to be angry. Then we start our revenge quest. Revenge begets revenge, and it's just a cycle of hate. And then we find that Abby is actually the one to break it because of Lev. It's simply above my pay grade to know how to deal with Lev as a character, but Lev being the pure golden boy to stop Abby from essentially committing more murder is where the revenge cycle breaks. I think the ending could use a lot of work. Why is it's just a lot of whys at the end. Personally, as I think about it, I'm just gonna ramble a little bit to throw out some ideas on what the ending could have been. I think it would have been really cool if the girls actually had a conversation. In the entire fucking game, they have not had a single conversation as to why Abby did what she did. And I think that people want to know why shit happened. Ellie never, I never asked, why did Abby do what she did? Not even a second. I think that if Ellie was just like, why did you do it? And Abby was like, look, I don't want to do this. Your dad killed my dad, and then I killed him, okay? Jeez. Even maybe having Abby teach Ellie how to forgive. I don't know. It seems like a lot, but I just didn't really like that the ending was so rushed. I don't know. I just think that there would be something kind of, I wouldn't say wholesome or even sweet, just something, I guess, bittersweet about the person that you started your entire revenge plot for was the person that taught you that maybe you should chill out and not do revenge. By the way, there was a detail at the end of the second game that she was wearing Dina's bracelet, which means she probably met with Dina, which means they're probably together still at the end. But we won't actually ever know. Naughty Dog has said that they're done with Last of Us, I think. I think that is what they said. And I don't believe them because I believed them once. Why would I believe them again? So when I inevitably return to this video and see how terribly I've done because I'm improved in quality and in video and I do scripting because I will obviously be a YouTuber by then, we can all reminisce about how simple our problems was when we were trying to just fix one of the games. That's what I got for you. This video was a mess. This video was actually just for me to test my lapel mic and to blab about Last of Us 2 because I am actually genuinely curious to see what you would do to fix Last of Us 2. I know that people are like, oh, it's such a terrible game, and they're so hateful about it, but no one's actually like bringing constructive criticism as in like, how the fuck do you fix it? The game exists and there's nothing you can do to change that, but it's fun to imagine what could be, especially since that's probably just my headcanon from now until the end of time. Anyway, here's a heart just for you. Save it later, use right now, I don't really care. It's your heart, you do you. Tell me how you think the quality of this video is because it's on my phone and I'm obviously sitting down. The phone is like really zoomed in and I actually really hate it. I'm gonna try to find a better angle next time for the next video. Leave a comment so that way maybe you can be featured in next video. And I think that Future Ruthie has another announcement, whatever I'm announcing in the future, because I don't know when this video is being edited.
Hi, it's Future Ruthie here. tell you about Patreon. You can throw money at me once a month and get stickers, sneak peeks into book projects. I'm going to be releasing writings early to them before I publish them elsewhere. It's a good time, but only become a Patreon if you have spare dollarinos. I won't be hurt if you don't. Just watch my videos, and that's good enough. I am pretty much anywhere in the internet under The Untold Sitcom or Ruthie The Untold Sitcom, so search for me that way. Thank you so much for listening through this Patreon plug. Thank you to all of these patrons, and I will see you guys in the next transmission. Future Ruthie is out.
Hey, you're pretty great. I enjoy your existence, and I hope that you have a wonderful day. Goodbye.